Very good to see you all guys here today, and trust you're having a good Friday. I'm actually broadcasting remotely from Montgomery, Alabama, so I'm on Central Time. So it's very early for me, just right 9:03 a.m. in the morning, and I'm normally starting my show at about 9:45 Eastern Time, and because I'm in the Carolinas normally, but so I'm down here for a Sukkot, and so. I hope you can see me good. I don't have very good lighting here. So let's go see what's cooking and see what's going on around the country. We got lots of news to share, and I'm sorry I lost a few minutes here. And we're going to take a look what's going on. And I've got like, oh, whoops, let me go see here. I just want you to be able to see my screen. So let me see here. We got this here. Okay. So there we go. I can hide that. And then I can go here. There we go. All right. So you can see that. Let me pull up. Oh, so I just had to reboot my computer, and I thought that might help. Didn't really help that much. But so here we go. We'll get the show on the road, and I trust you're all having a wonderful Friday. Just having a few glitches here, but I got this bet to pop up here for you. One second here. Okay, so this here is we're up and away here. So let me see. All right. So I better get going here. All right. So of course, down by the border, this is big news, as you all know, and the media is giving you one side of it because it seems pretty obvious to everybody. Is what's going on here is that you've got a whole bunch of these supposed immigrants that all decided all at once to flee Honduras. All right. So now let's think about, like, in the history of America, we've never had any such, groups of 5,000 or 10,000 suddenly decide all at once to come and hit, the border of the U.S. and try to get into the country. And it just so happens that by the time they arrive, it will be right before the midterm elections. So is that just a coincidence? Well, let's have a look, see if it looks like, these are really serious immigrants here. And from what I can tell you, now, I have some sound audio, but because I don't have connection to a TeamViewer, so I won't be able to play any sound today. But I don't worry, because I'll be able to fill you in with these stories here, which I was going to play for you. So normally when you have refugees, fleeing a state, say for instance, if Honduras is this impoverished state, and believe me, Guatemala, Honduras, and some parts of Costa Rica and Panama, and some of these Central American countries are very, very poor. There's no doubt about it. I've been there. I lived in Costa Rica and Panama for a few weeks and a few months here and there. So yeah, there is a lot of poverty there. But now let me say this: if your country has kept you impoverished and burdened you and caused you to say, I want to go and leave this country because I can't survive here with my children and my family, and I'm going to go to America because that's the land of opportunity. So on your way to America, are you going to be chanting out with Trump, out with Trump? Take a look. Like, this is absolutely absurd. So let me see here if I got a yeah, here's this guy here. Here's a guy here, and he's shouting on the top of his voice for the cameras. The cameras are there. They know the cameras are there. and he shouted, "Out with Trump! Out with Trump!" Nobody, no immigrant in their right mind would ever do that. You're on your way to try get you know, a new life in a new country. The last thing you're going to do is be kicking the president and thinking that oh well, that's okay because you know whatever they've been told, you know, it's just absolutely insane. So the view is there've been reporters there that talk to the people. They found out that there's people from other countries there, and particularly like say in Bangladesh, which they're Muslim immigrants, and so there's a bunch. These are not just Hondurans, but they say the numbers are about 60% Hondurans. So what appears to me is that they've taken a bunch of prisoners that were in prison for a year, 2, 3 years, and they decided to turn them loose, or they've decided to take a bunch of people and offered them money to say, hey, come. They just dropped everything. They don't have any possessions with them. They don't have backpacks, barely. You know, some of them do, but most of them don't even have any possessions or nothing. And they're just going on this thing. It's like, hey, if we pay you $1,000, will you go to the American border and protest for us? And so who is behind this? And so I'm convinced that Trump is behind this. I'm pretty sure he figured if I spend $20 million and if I can get a scene like this going of a march on the border, that finally the House and the Senate will approve funding for a wall, because the current wall that these immigrants are facing is to this. You can just walk underneath. This one you can just step over top of. And so there is it's really strange that one second here. Okay, so it's really strange that so what I'm saying is, yeah, Trump obviously did this because there is no better way to get funding for the wall and to get the base, you know, supporting him, because who put him in office was a whole bunch of Americans that were saying we need a wall. I mean, every conference, I mean, every rally he had in 2016, he was saying we need to build the wall, and Mexico is going to pay for it. And so people voted him in for that. So obviously for the midterms, he thought if he brings in, you know, 5,000-10,000 people marching on the border, that it will strengthen his position. Well, you know, obviously Trump didn't do that because he's not really that stupid. But I tell you who is stupid enough to do that, and that is the Democrats. So the Democrats are so desperate. I'm going to show you what's going on in the country, and it's not good for them. It's not looking too good for them. So right now, here's some polls, and they're getting desperate. So you can see in October here. So I you know, trust you can all see my map here, but because I normally have a couple monitors, I can see what you're seeing, but I'm just trusting you can see what's going on here. So look, this is from this morning, okay? So this is the Senate, and as you can see here, you've got they're forecasting that there's 50 solid Republicans for the Senate and only 44 Democrats. And then look at this, the race changes, you know, from a month to month. August, you know, August and September's Democrats look pretty steady, and then they took a bit of a drop, and then they've never recovered since they took a drop back in late August. But look at, yeah, the Republicans took a tiny drop, but then they started climbing really quick. And so that climb has put a lot of races back in contention. And so, for instance, in Florida, I don't have the numbers with me, but to show you, but the latest numbers I know for Florida, between the Senate race there, between what's his name, Chris, and the ex-governor of Florida, well, he's like neck and neck. It's like 46 to 47, right? Well, he was always well behind. Well, the Democrat, forget what his name is, but he's like Nelson. He's always like, you know, never doing anything except around elections. That's what Trump was saying is, and he's just like a, you know, a real deadbeat. But anyway, what it is, what we got going on here is you got the Democrats that are so desperate that they have to change this pattern. See this pattern where Democrats are falling? And right here, look at this here. They're falling down. They're falling off the cliff here. And well, this here. That they don't even show them falling much, but they show that the Republicans climbing. But the truth is, the Democrats are falling. So anyway, so if you look over here, so you've got to toss up a 6. So these 6 are in the gray, and so they're not sure. So it's Arizona, and then you got Florida, Nelson, and then you've got Indiana is Donnelly, and then McCaskill, and then you've got Tester in Montana, and in Nevada you've got Heller. Okay, so these are the toss-up states. They're too close to call. So right now they're putting in, say for Florida, they've got the one that's a little ahead. He's only 1 point ahead, and given that they always exaggerate the polls, like because the polls are supposed to indicate how much fraud they can get away with, and say in Florida, especially around Miami-Dade, Fort Lauderdale area, it's a very stronghold for the Democrats, and they honestly, they were caught filling out, which is illegal. They were filling out these paper ballots, these mail-in paper ballots. That is illegal, and this was reported to the police, and the police did not arrest them. And it's a felony. You can go to jail for up to 10 years for that. So what's going on there, I don't know. But that they were reporting that in Miami-Dade and Fort Lauderdale fraud on a continual basis, where they said, oh, we have to recalibrate the computers. All the computers are owned, well, a bunch of them are owned by George Soros and a company out of Portugal or Spain somewhere. So it's like, you know, he's like the man behind it, but it's this other company. What in the world are we doing with a company that's a foreign company? That is absurd. And then the other company that handles quite a few states, I think it's about 15 states or so, and that is Mitt Romney. His son owns a company that owns a lot of the software. When they own the software, what they do is they say it's proprietary. No, I'm sorry, but everything that the federal government does is not proprietary. It's owned by the public, us, we the people, and so this should never ever be happening. Is where you have you know, private companies refusing to tell. And so we've had people on record be addressing the Senate under oath saying that there is manipulation in this software and that they cannot reveal it because but these are like whistleblowers that have admitted that the software was able to be manipulated and was being manipulated. And so when they said, you know, our votes being manipulated in the last election in 2016, Obama said no. Well, Democrats are saying they're not manipulated, and that's why they don't want voter IDs, and that's why they don't want to change the voter system, because for the last 50, 60 years, they've been happily manipulating all the votes. And just like you heard in Pennsylvania, like in 2014, there was a precinct that had something like 120%, like over 100% of the precinct had voted for Obama. Right, absolute nonsense. So let's have a look also what's happening here. If you look at this, ooh, okay, so I didn't shrink this one down good enough, but I can fix that so you can see what's going on here. 1 second. That I can. Yeah, probably can. There we go. Okay, so just shrink that down. So you can see here, this is, okay, let me see here. Just gotta get a little bit smaller. It'll fit on the screen better. Okay, so this is the house, because this is what the house, they're supposed to have this big blue wave. Well, this big blue wave is turning into a red wave, because again, what I'm saying is they're manipulating the polls. So they're saying this right now, they expect to be able to fraudulently get enough people elected to give them a few seat majority, 205 to 199. There's 31 that are toss-ups right now. And then it lists all these in the toss-ups here. And you can see most of them are red. There's only 2 that are blue. But these are too close to call. But if all these go the direction that it looks like, we're going to have a red wave. And if you look at the last election, by the way, let's get this straight. You know, Trump, everybody was blaming that the polls were wrong at the last election in 2016. The polls were not wrong. Trust me, they were right. And Hillary was going to win by a slim margin of maybe, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6%. That was a whole plan. And that's what they had expected to do. And I firmly believe that this election in 2016, that God stepped in and intervened. And what happens is, you know, he says, what you do in secret, I'll shout from the mountaintops and from the rooftops. That's exactly what we had going on in 2016, where God started lifting the lid off of the fraud. And we had WikiLeaks, and we had Hillary's emails that's been exposed, and the deep state and the FBI. You know how they've been weaponized by Obama and Hillary, completely weaponized by Comey, and such a loathing for the Republicans. And he was in charge of the FBI, as long as with Strzok and Page and all these deep state fanatics that were going to do everything possible. In fact, they assured Hillary that they were definitely going to win. And so that they said, don't worry, you've got it. And so what happened was on the night of the election in 2016, you know what happened was that Hillary grabbed like an expensive bottle of champagne. I think it was worth $2,000 or $3,000, and she threw it at this big screen TV. And what she did was she smashed it, and she broke the ceiling on herself. You know, she was always talking about breaking the glass ceiling and getting a woman president. Well, she was so furious, and she was too drunk to be able to talk. And that so when they had to give a concession speech, there's so much fraud in that last election that I'm telling you, what they did was, like in Pennsylvania, they were like up to about 96 or 97% counting the votes, and then suddenly it went back to 92%. And I told my friend, I said, you know what's happened? This was around about midnight. So around midnight, they had to intervene to stop Trump from winning. And when they realized that they couldn't stop Trump winning Florida, then they had to move it to Pennsylvania and to other states, and they couldn't. They lost control. And people on Fox were adamant that Hillary was going to win, and they did not call it. One of the girls on Fox, I mean, I could show you the videos of this. She's going, well, it's simple math. Why aren't they saying that Trump is winning? And they're going, well, you know, you've got to be cautious. You know, you just can't jump ahead and jump to conclusions. This is what they were doing. It's absolutely crazy. But the lady there, I forget what her name was, but she was thinking, obviously Trump's winning this. And my friend had to go to Israel the next day. This was November 11, 2016. And it was I was talking to him about 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm saying, look, I said, don't worry, Trump has got this won. I've just seen the results for Pennsylvania, and they cannot. Once he had won Pennsylvania, I said there is no possible way Hillary can win now. And then Wisconsin fell, and Michigan fell. These other states started to fall in line behind Trump, and there's no way she could win. But they would not call it. Even though there was no way for her to win, they would not call that Trump had won, and he won by a huge margin. So Hillary had only had something like 206 electoral votes, and that's what you got to go by, right? She only had about 206 to Trump's 305. So there's a huge difference there. So, but it was because God intervened, not because the polls got it wrong. Don't get me wrong. There's no way Trump would have won if God did not intervene. You know, I know that. Okay. So when Trump says, you know, the polls were wrong, no, the polls were right. The fraud was all in place for Hillary to win, and it failed because God intervened. And maybe God stopped these electronic computers from switching votes like they normally do, switch massive amount of votes. It's all a dirty trick. So anyway, so you can see here the way that the battle is going on for the House. and it does not look too good for these Democrats. Well, right now we got pretty neck and neck. That's actually too close to call, 205 to 109. So then, let's see over here. So this here is absolutely crazy. Okay, so you've got terror in the mail and new suspicious. This is just from this morning. So you got new suspicious packages addressed to Senator Cory Booker, James Clapper, found, and Grim Telly at 12. All right. Secret Service slams New York Times fictional Trump assassination story as outrageous and an insult. And Robert De Niro, who's one of these victims, speaks out on suspicious package at his restaurant. Okay, so what's really going on here? Okay, well, let me point out something that's you just got to use common sense. Anytime you're trying to crack a crime, I'm no criminal investigator, but if you're trying to crack a crime, if you watched enough movies like I have, I don't watch many movies actually, but if you know what happens, you got to have a motive. Okay, so what's the motive that all these are obviously are Democrats who've been attacking Trump viciously? They include Soros and CNN and stuff like that. So, and of course, you had the governor of New York come out, and you had, all right, I have all these sound bites I was gonna let you listen to, but that's okay. And so, but what's going on here is that you have to have a motive. And can you tell me one conservative, one right-wing crazy nutcase that could see any sense at all of attacking these Trump haters right before the midterm elections, and that he would think that this would be good for Trump, right? I could pay you $1 million to try and find somebody crazy enough to do that. I don't think you could. I mean, they would have to be so crazy, they would not be able to even mail anything that would even look like a bomb, okay? So that's how much crazy we're talking about here. We're talking crazy. And there is no right-wing nutcase that's capable of doing this. Then the other thing you got to look at is that Fox News and all the media were falsely reporting that they were sent through the mail and that they came back to Weissman Schultz. Well, on this package to CNN, there was no postal stamp on it. So that means it didn't go through the Postal Service. And the protocol for all couriers is they do not deliver any package that has stamps on it. So there's no physical way for that parcel bomb, to be delivered to CNN. It's not possible. There was no stamp on it from the Postal Service. And then also, the amount of stamps on it for a package like that coming from Georgia to CNN, there wasn't enough stamps on it to even ship it by the Postal Service. So even if it did go through, it would be rejected for insufficient stamps. So there's a lot of red flags here. And there was some real issues. I showed a clock on it, and the clock didn't have an alarm function. It was a typical clock that you hang on your wall or so, and it has no alarm ability. If it doesn't have alarm, then a clock cannot be used to be a trigger to set off a bomb. And what the Democrats are failing to remember is that we have stopped a lot of the weaponizing of the CIA and the FBI. So these bombs are going to be investigated, hopefully, not by the deep state, but by, conservatives and Trump supporters that are there to protect the administration from such, false reporting. And so that they should come out with their findings very soon before this election. Now, the other thing that we've got some good news coming for the election, and so I showed you the maps. And by the way, we do have already early voting, so you can actually get out there and start voting. And some states already have stopped the ability for you to enroll. So if you know people that could vote, but they're not voting, it might be too late to enroll in some states. In other states, you can still enroll right up until the day of the election, which is a little dangerous, because then who do you know, and how can you guarantee that these people are qualified even to vote? So what I'm saying is, people need to find other people that are not voting, and even though we're going to see a red wave, let's not take it for granted, and let's drive the point home. Say, instead of just winning by 5%, if we make a win by 20%, that will give the conservatives a huge shot in the arm to do what they have to do. Okay, so there's a real good reason. So even if you're in a state where your Republican nominee is way ahead in the polls, grab as many people as you can and still vote, because that's going to send a huge message. If they go, by the way, in some of the polls already, they're showing like over 100 and 200% increase in participation from a few years ago. Okay, in the midterms. If you compare the midterms to say 2010, there was one poll that showed it well over 100% in Dallas or so, in a county there, which was showing massive increase. So there's a huge amount of excitement. So over here, I'm just showing you the crowd. This is from the Dallas meeting where Trump had a facility there, which sat about 18,000 people, and there was approximately look at some of these photos here. Here's a better shot of it. Look at that. Okay, so there's approximately 25,000 people that were outside the venue because they couldn't get in, but they had 100,000 people that enrolled to try to get in, and they couldn't get in. So most people of the 100,000 were over about 50,000 didn't even show up because the lines were too big. They couldn't get a parking spot. Like, I hear some people that they were driving down to go to one of these meetings. I know one couple were going to go down and to Mesa, Arizona, Mesa, and they just saw these mile-long lines, and they said, "There's no way we're going to get in on time for the meeting, and we'd be stuck outside." So they turned around and went home, and that's what happens. This is historic. I mean, you can see this. Look at this here. Right to the very top. Look, if you see my mouse, look at the very top here, loaded with people to the very top. Okay, this was filled to capacity. Of course it was. They had 25,000 people outside that couldn't get in, so every single seat was taken. Trust me, they could not fit any more people in here. And here's the stage where Trump came out to address the people. Absolutely just amazing. And so what have we got here? Let me see. Yeah, so that's why I already showed you. And then here, CNN won't show you the crowds here, of these venues where Trump is just filling them out. So Trump goes to the countryside of Nebraska, right, where there's virtually no people. He went to a small town. But let me see if I can switch back here so you can see me. I have to remember where I have to go to here, and then I can go back to here, and then I can click on here. Oh yeah, I know where I gotta go. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so you can see me again. So what I was saying was, let me cancel that. Okay, so where was my train of thought? Anyway, so I was just talking about so he was in Nebraska, all right? So what happened was he goes to this tiny little town, and it only has 13,000 people there, and he went into this venue, and he like packed it out with about 8,000 people. That means half the town showed up in this venue. And that's the same night or so, Barack Obama did a speech in Vegas. Well, Vegas has a population of something like 700,000 people, and he went in an auditorium that seats about 8,000, and what people saw from the crowds there. I don't have pictures to show you, but you could easily Google it and look it up. How many people showed up for Obama's? Most of the seats were empty, and they think that maybe 2,000 people showed up. So if this tells you how motivated Democrats are in a huge city like Vegas, by the way, Nevada has a lot of Democrat supporters there. Okay, so in a state where there's lots of Democrat supporters, and they can't even fill one small facility of 8,000. They couldn't even fill it half full. And when Obama comes to speak, and then you know that there is no excitement amongst the Democrats. There's a huge wave of blacks. You're going to see the black numbers coming out in huge. By the way, right as we speak, what time is it now? So it's 9:30. So it's here in Central Time, I guess it is. And so on the East Coast, it's 10:30. So in about half an hour, Donald Trump is meeting with the black groups that represent a lot of the blacks in America, Blacks for Trump, or whatever they call it. And he's meeting with them today. And he's going to spur them on and encourage them to keep doing what they're doing. And you're going to see huge numbers vote conservative this time like never before in America's history. This, you know, Obama came promising in 2008. He was promising hope and change. What he wanted to do was change us into a communist, Marxist society run by oligarchs. Oligarchs is what we have right now. We're trying to switch it. Remember in Trump's inauguration, he said this is not a transfer of one president to the other president, but this is a transfer from Washington back to the people. And he said, how many people have been here in Washington to make themselves wealthy? And he says, we've got to stop doing that. And when he's speaking that, he's got all these ex-presidents, Bush and Clinton, and that other guy, what's his name? He was there too. Build a Habitat for Humanity guy, Carter. So Carter was there, and you got to remember, guys, I'm a Canadian Australian, so American politics is rather new to me. I've been here 20 years, so I do know a little bit. But I could talk to you about Australian politics, which I actually, speaking of which, I might even do that shortly. But so anyway, so my point was there is a huge groundswell, like historic. I mean, I'm saying this is historic. Right now, if Trump went to Los Angeles, and I really don't know why, you got to understand, Trump is still surrounded by some deep state. Okay, so we have say white hats and black hats. It's a very complex issue, and so I can never explain to you exactly what's really going on, who's part of the deep state and who's not. But say Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are part of the deep state. Trust me, they will be going. They will be within the next year. Within a few months. Within a couple months, Paul Ryan's going to be out, and then Mitch McConnell will be next. There's some deep staters that are being really pushed out, and they need to be pushed out. So there's a lot of things that Trump would like to do that he's not able to get done because he's still dealing with this. For instance, Nikki Haley, by the way, just so you know this, okay, because a lot of people don't know this, but Nikki Haley, a lot of people love her and what she's been doing, right? Well, to be honest, I forgot to be looking at the camera here, but so to be honest, Nikki Haley is not the good person that you would like her to be. Yes, she was putting a really brick through the Middle Eastern fanatical Islamic states that were attacking Israel day in and day out, and using the UN to do that. Okay, she put a real stop to that, but Trump would have put a stop to that no matter who he put in there. So yeah, she did that, and that was a good job. I'm not saying that was bad, but you get this, at a meeting that she had just a few weeks ago, she said that it was Reince Priebus who invited her to be the ambassador for the UN. She told Reince Priebus that she had no experience at all with the United Nations, and he said, "Well, that doesn't matter. You can get on the job training." And so, who was training her since she's been there for the last 2 years? almost 2 years, is Henry Kissinger. Go onto Amazon.com and type in New World Order, and you'll see Henry Kissinger's book on the New World Order. Henry Kissinger is part of the New World Order and has been since the 70s, when he worked with Nixon to create the petrodollar. So we would not drill for American oil, but we would buy Saudi oil and Middle East oil as long as they bought our bonds. They bought our bonds, we would buy their oil. And so American production started to fall, and we imported millions and millions of barrels. We made them very, very wealthy. So that was going on with Henry Kissinger way back in the 70s with Nixon, and he's still at it today in 2018. Can you believe this guy will not retire? And Nikki Haley said that Henry Kissinger was meeting with her every 2 months to show her the ropes and to show her what to do. And she was on an interview recently, I think it was with Fox, and she said, you know, how wonderful Henry Kissinger was, and how, because they were criticizing John Kerry for interfering with Iran and the European leaders as he was going over there, try to encourage them to wait out Trump, so that if we kick out Trump in 2020, then all you have to do is wait out a couple of years and a year and a half, and then we can get him out of there, and then we can go back to our Iranian deal. That's what John Kerry was doing. And they said, well, isn't Henry Kissinger doing the same thing? And she said, oh, no, Henry Kissinger is wonderful. No, I have the utmost respect for him. No, what he does is he comes and tells us before he goes to a foreign country what he's going to do, what he's going to say. And then when he comes back and reports to us. What is she saying there? Well, she's saying right there that the deep state, the New World Order, is trying to regain control through the Trump administration, through Nikki Haley and others. Now, one good thing was that she said, well, you know, Trump and I have our differences, and even though we do, we still get along very well. That's very good to know, because that means Trump is not buying everything that Henry Kissinger is saying. That's a really good thing. Now, of course, we don't want to have Arab states, you know, making all kinds of false accusations and putting Israel under pressure. We're all for that. But she was claiming that Assad was using chemical weapons, chlorine gases, against his own people. There's a United States chemical weapons expert, and he said there is no such thing as a chlorine bomb. And I've seen a BBC reporter go to the city where they had done this chlorine bomb, and it was on the top floor in a balcony. They have concrete balconies there. You go to the top floor, cameraman shows you the balcony, and here is, you know, a bomb, and it was about, I would say about 4 or 5 feet big, you know, about maybe 8 inches in diameter, or 10 inches at the most. Little damage the concrete a bit, but still like in one piece. Supposedly this bomb fell down, blew up, but it's still in one piece, and gassed the whole neighborhood. So in conclusion, the BBC is part of the fake news. BBC is part of the fake news. He says, so we still really don't know what exactly happened here. Was it a chemical bomb or wasn't it? He knows it wasn't. He interviewed children that went to the hospital because they were told, if you go to the hospital, you get peanut butter sandwiches. The children went there, and the adults grabbed them, not doctors. The doctor said, we were just doing our job like normal, and suddenly all these kids come in, and these adults picked up the kids, these little toddlers, and started pouring water on them, claiming that there was some chemical attack. There was no evidence of a chemical attack. This is a doctor on record saying this. The BBC reporter admitted that the doctor's testimony was true, and he's part of the deep state. And Nikki Haley insists that Assad was chemically bombing his own people with chlorine. And then they were first claiming it was sarin gas. Sarin gas is like as this like saying pigs fly. I mean, pigs don't fly. I mean, so there's a really stupid thing to say. And then they were saying, well, maybe they mixed chlorine gas with sarin gas. Well, if you mix the two together, the chlorine makes the sarin gas less potent. So they just wouldn't do that. So the whole thing was totally fabricated, and they were supposedly using water to wash off of in the first bombing sarin gas. Okay, the way sarin gas works is you've got to be dressed up in hazmat suits to be able to go in and rescue people. Because if you pick up a child that had been affected by sarin gas, like one drop, if you got one drop, if you picked up the child and one drop got on your skin, you'd be dead within a few minutes. So this is absolutely insane that sarin gas was used. There's no evidence at all that any sarin gas was used in those bombings. There's no evidence that chlorine gas was, because there's no such thing as a chlorine gas bomb. So the whole thing was a ruse. And when push came to shove, Trump admitted he was basing his evidence on social media evidence. Because the left wing put propaganda out there that yes, the Assad did it. That's why he sent 70 missiles on Syria and bombed Syria. Anyway, so that's enough of that. But I'm just getting you the point there. Nikki Haley was right on behind there, condemning without any facts, without any evidence. Oh yeah, if you got all the facts, you got the evidence that he was involved. Yeah, by all means, sanction him or bomb him or do. We don't have a permission to bomb unless Syria is an immediate threat to the homeland or American territories. Then Trump could bomb him, or if Congress declares an act of war against Syria. So here's a quasi-legal situation. I went on Fox News radio with one of Trump's advisors. He was hosting the show, and Dr. I forget what his name is. He's got a funny name. He's from Britain originally. And anyway, but he was, of course, stepped down from being in the first few months or so. But for the first part, and he's still like a consultant on Fox News. But so I called up the show and I said, Trump has no legal right to bomb Syria, and an advisor for Donald Trump totally, disagreed with me, and he hung up on me. Well, I'm sorry, but the law is the law. The Constitution is the Constitution. The Constitution says that Trump can do it if there's an immediate threat. Syria has never, ever threatened to attack Americans, even foreign bases, or their homeland. Never. There's no record ever. So definitely Trump could not do this. And then secondly, Congress could do it if they said, okay, if he's bombing his own people, we can intervene and we can step in. Well, Congress didn't do that. Okay, so he was completely wrong. And then hanging up on me on Fox News radio, that was wrong thing to do. So they have to cover up their tracks because they don't want to hear the truth. And then General Mattis was the next day before the Senate, a special Senate hearing, and he had to give answers to what they might do towards Syria right before the bombing. And what happened was he said that they do have legal, right to bomb. And then he said he defers to his attorneys when push came to shove, because there was a couple reps, like there was the one lady from Hawaii, and she was a Democrat, and she quoted the Constitution and the law that prevents Trump from intervening in Syria. And then his response to that was, well, I'll defer to my attorney's, opinion for the final decision as to what we'll do to make sure it's lawful. But even then, he couldn't say a word against that, which is the law of the land that says that Trump can't do that unless there was congressional permission. And that's what she was asking for. Let Congress decide this, because the homeland is not under threat. Anyway, so that's Nikki Haley. So Nikki Haley, it's really good to see that she's resigning. She's going to try to run for a Senate. See, what happened is she got all the publicity she could get out of being in the UN for those 2 years. She wants to run for president in 2024, and So what she wants to do is, I think, get a Senate seat, because if you're going to run for any position, governor or Senate, you got to start your campaign in the first quarter of next year, 2019. Well, guess what? She retires in December. So the first quarter of 2019, she'll be available to start her campaign. Now, she hasn't said this. She hasn't admitted this. There's speculation on my part. But look for her to be running for something to give her more publicity so she can make a presidential run in 2024. And we do not want this lady to run for president in 2024. She is a New World Order, deep state, and they hate Russia, and they hate, Syria. Look, I'm not sticking up for everything Assad does. I don't like what he's doing with Iran and working with Hezbollah and allowing Hezbollah there to bring in rockets and weapons and all that. And Israel has every right to bomb those threats. And Russia is totally in agreement with this, guys. Get this. The media is not going to tell you this. Russia is totally in agreement that Israel, it has every right to bomb Hezbollah positions. Putin is for that. Yes, he works with both sides. He works with the Iranians and he works with Israel. But he says, no, when it comes to that, you have every right to defend your country. And Putin's not stupid. And so you won't have any issue there. But look, when you start talking international politics and political views, it's a little complex if you don't know what's really going on. And what's really going on is still a travesty. And the CIA is still heavily involved in Syria. And we've got positions in there. And Russia and the Syrian troops are going to start hitting American-backed positions with the Kurds. So watch for that, because sovereignty, Assad has promised sovereignty over every corner of Syria. There will be no Kurds nation in Syria. Yeah, Kurds are going to be welcome to live there, but under the Syrian government sovereignty, not under their own sovereignty. They can have their own, province, but they're going to be under Syrian sovereignty. And America doesn't want that. America wants to stop that, and they can't. And so, actually, very good news. Trump, just a couple days ago, I doubt if you've ever heard this either, because they're not going to let you. What's really happening, Trump wants to pull American troops out of Syria. He's trying to do the right thing. His advisors, which are deep state advisors, like Kelly and Mattis got to go. Mattis won't last about a few months, and he'll be out. You'll watch. After these midterm elections, you'll see Mattis will be gone. I've been calling for Mattis to go and Kelly to go, but they're still in there. And of course, Priebus, he was definitely put in. The first thing that when Trump won, he appointed Priebus. Why? Because that was the contract. He was under obligation. They put a gun to his head. He said, "You're going to put in Mike Pence." And by the way, Mike Pence is going to go too, and Priebus. That was a condition. They were going to allow him to be president, and he agreed to that because he figured he could work around it. By the way, some people say, if you're going to have your enemies, you got to have them close to you. So he had his enemies close to him in the first set of appointees that he had. So time's getting away on me here, but so this is really good news. So what Trump wants to do is pull U.S. troops out of Syria. So he's going to pull them out. Guess what his advisor said? Oh, no, you can't do that. You got to give us at least 6 months and maybe more. So now the deep state is under pressure. The CIA, this is the Pentagon and CIA that still have deep state bias, if you like. Like I said, you had white hats and black hats. You also got some gray hats. The gray hats kind of want to do the right thing. They're coming from a different angle, but we got to get the gray hats to completely become white hats. So they stop doing their New World Order atrocities. And so now they're under pressure to allow Trump to pull U.S. troops, which have no right to be in Syria. Assad, the president of a democratically elected, vastly, the majority of Syrians love the guy. He's got over 80% approval rating. And so we have no right to toss him out. And we had everybody from Mike Pompeo, the envoy to the Middle East. We had Nikki Haley. We had everybody saying that Assad's got to go. Everybody, right? But even Putin said, look, if Syrian people want to do a change of leadership, they can do that. But he's saying, no, that has to be a decision for the Syrian people. The Syrian people will never do that. Absolutely never. There's like over 80% of support from my friend. He's got a really good friend, lived in Syria for years. And she's like in her 80s now. But she says everything you see about the media and what's happening with Syria is absolutely not true. They had hundreds of thousands of Christians, and they were being heavily persecuted by ISIS. So anyway, there's very good news that he wants to pull them out. He mentioned this last year, if you remember, and he's going to pull them out. He said, we're going to pull them out very soon. He didn't give a timeline. He doesn't like to give timelines. But in this case, there is no enemy that's going to take advantage of him like there would be in, say, Afghanistan. But the enemy in Afghanistan is that we would lose control. The CIA would lose control of the poppy fields. What do they make? They make heroin out of poppy, right? Poppies, yeah. So these heroin production, which is worth $1.2 trillion, is being controlled by the CIA, and that's why we went into Afghanistan, to control that. And so, if you don't believe me, you can just dig some history behind that, and you'll see that the Clintons have been involved with bringing drugs into the United States using military planes. And see, what they did was they bought forestry planes, and they were being used by the CIA, so it looked like they were forestry planes. It's a smoke screen after smoke screen. You got to dig through it all to find out what was really happening. This has been happening for decades, absolute decades. Okay, so there's a history there. But anyway, so what I'm saying is that there's some good news there. He's going to be pulling out, and the deep state on his team, his administration, is being forced. The CIA is being forced out of Syria. So that's very good news. It's good news because this means Trump isn't part of this deep state. That's really good news. Okay. Now, speaking of Israel, what Trump wants is really bad for Israel. Really bad. He wants a two-state solution. Now, he said, he can understand. He's really turned into a real political guy. He's always been a good negotiator. You know, he said, look, I'm in business to make money, so I have to do whatever it takes to make money. He said that when he was running for the campaign. Well, so he wants to. Anyway, so I was just about thinking. What was I gonna say? So anyway, I lost my train of thought there, but because I was thinking, there was some other stories which I wanted to get through right before we finish up on the show, and I can go through some of those other stories to share my screen with you again, so you can see that. Okay, and then we go back to here and here. So overall, so what I was going to say was with the deep. Oh man, so I remember now what I was thinking. And we got to go. Let me show you here. Here we go. So we got the two-state solution, right? You know, as I explained in last week's, you can tune into last week. I went into a lot more detail of that, but I don't have time to do that today. But so what Trump wants to do is, say, for instance, if he wants a two-state solution where Jerusalem's going to be the capital for the Arabs, the Palestinians, okay, so-called Palestinians, okay. So that includes Hamas, okay, that they're going to be able to use, like, so you've got East Jerusalem, you've got West Jerusalem, and you got three sections of Jerusalem, and so they're going to quarter them off, and the Vatican is going to control, I think, the whole city. So you're going to, and then the other part of the city is going to be controlled by the Palestinians, and then the west part of Jerusalem. Okay, so it's going to be. So sometimes my phone listens into me. I don't know why it does that. I was not able to find that. Okay, I'm not even talking to her. Okay, well, so anyway, so what I'm saying is, this is a really bad news, and so the way Trump is going to force them to the table, he's going to say, so say if the Palestinians say, okay, we will give up this as long as we can have our shared ownership of Jerusalem. And then if Israel doesn't counter offer or cede something else, bring something else to the table, then they're going to be put under pressure, and preference will be given to America backing, say in this case, the Palestinians against Israel. This has been warned against. You do not divide the land. This land does not belong to the Arabs at all, period. End of story. They went to war against Israel. They lost. They're the losers. Israel owns the entire Gaza Strip and the entire West Bank. In fact, they could have taken the entire country of Egypt and Syria, because those countries, and Jordan, they could take all those countries, because in 67, all those countries, and 73, the Yom Kippur War, they all attacked Israel, and Israel won, all of them, against all odds. They won. So there's absolutely no way that any of this here belongs to the Palestinians. Now, Palestinians are welcome to live there, like a lot of Arabs live in Israel, and they're Israeli citizens, and they actually are fighting in the Israeli war. And so they actually are soldiers in the Israeli military. And so there's a lot of Arabs there that are part of it. And so that's actually, a good thing. But what happens is these Palestinians, they actually want to have their own country and stuff like this. And it looks like Trump, he thinks that bringing peace to the Middle East is something that's going to be pretty simple. And it's really not. And so it's going to be something that's going to, just cause a lot of headache for Trump. And it could be rather a disaster if he's going to go about it the other way. However, the way he words it is this. He says, okay, so, if they don't want a two-state, they want a one-state. He said, that's okay, if that's what they want. And he's saying they, he means the Palestinians and the Israelis. If that's what they want, then I'm for a one-state. If they want a two-state, then I'm for a two-state. Got to read between the lines. And then he wants to put together, like, it was a $500 billion pack. I don't know. It was like a huge incentive, financial incentive, billions and billions of dollars. And then Europe was going to come up with half the money, and America was going to come up with half the money. And they would have billions of dollars to rebuild their settlements. But the big issue is that, Israel population is somewhere around 8 million. There's a total of about, say, so people that say that they have a rightful claim to live in Palestine of maybe 15 million, and they want a right of return. That's been part of what the PLO has been insisting on all these years. Well, if you get a right of return from that, and then you have elections in Israel, Israel won't exist anymore. That's their plan, is to not allow Israel to remain as a nation in the country. And so, so let me just say here. So you can see how things are not looking too good on that side of things. So I got a few minutes left here. So let me say also there was this issue with this what's his name, Khashoggi. This was a journalist for the Washington Post. He was an American citizen, and then he was killed, and it really set off alarm bells across the West. And my point of view on this is it's a bit of a double standard. What we got our neighbors in Mexico here. They had elections just this year, and the opposition had murdered over 100 politicians that were running for for a political office. They killed 100 of them. So in this case, the Saudi government killed one guy, but how he died was rather horrific, I must admit. And so everybody's freaking out. But apparently, one story I heard was that his uncle, Khashoggi's uncle, he was going to testify against the Clintons, and he died mysteriously just a couple weeks ago. And then Khashoggi died. And so there is a possibility that this was a hit. Don't forget, Saudi Arabia was working with both the Republicans and the Democrats. and so they each have their, say, crown princes. And so the crown prince is not the king. So there's the king of Saudi Arabia, just so you know. He's in control of the country. And then he had nominated this crown prince to basically run the country. And now this crown prince has been really, really brought down a lot of notches, and he's lost all his appeal. And now they was going to have this huge economic summit where they were going to raise hundreds of billions of dollars to put in this new economic zone in the middle of the desert in the far west of Saudi Arabia. There's going to be this new high-tech zone, economic development there, which is going to be real international. It's going to work with Israel and Egypt and a lot of the other countries there, into Europe as well. So that's all been put on hold because of what happened there. But there's a lot of things that's going on behind that. So let me see. So you can see here. By the way, remember last week I was saying how the tanks had all arrived outside the border town with Gaza. That had put a lot of pressure on Hamas, and Hamas had called the peoples to stop a lot of the demonstrations. There were still a few more people that died, and remember I showed you some of these things here. So with all these tanks, so that was what was going on last week. And last weekend it looked like there might be an invasion, and because they had slowed down a lot of these protests, Israel had finally decided to start bringing in fuel into the Gaza Strip because they had finally calmed down some of the protesting. There's still some protesting going on, but it's a lot less than what it was. So instead of having 20,000 people, they might have had 10,000 or less. And Hamas was actually promoting that they not do it. So there's some progress that's been made there on the front. And so here's a picture of that border. So that's the fence. So you got these boards of, and they're illegals. By the way, America is very pro-immigrant. And what you have on the media is they're actually saying that Trump is against immigration. Trump is not against immigration. Trump wants controlled immigration, and he's against illegal immigration. That's a huge difference, and we're not seeing that in the mainstream media. And so, just so what they've done with these pipe bombs is they've tried to make out that these right-wingers are very violent, and what they do then, they this morning they're playing a series of negative they pick out clips from Trump over the last 4 years, anything that he's ever said that could be interpreted as being violent, to make it out like Trump is the violent one, and that all these bombs are stemming from his supporters. And that's what, like I said, you won't find any right-wing supporter that would ever support bombing any Democrats. The whole point of anyone doing that is absolutely absurd. And Nancy Pelosi, and she was out there saying all kinds of crazy things like, yeah, we're gonna make up these malicious stories, and then we're gonna put them out, leak them to the media, and then we're gonna back them up and make them all sound real. She said that's part of their campaign. And so they're out there being as so this is also another part of the fence. I mean, how hard would it be to get over that fence? And so Trump has actually he's deploying, he wants to deploy troops. And I heard in North Carolina there was some people that were saying that yes, there are troops that are being deployed, but there's also lots of National Guards. So there was Texas was putting out more National Guards there, boasting their strength, as well as Arizona sending more National Guards there. So there's going to be a lot of additional support there. And they will not be shooting these immigrants. That would be absolutely stupid. Some people talk so stupid, like that, as though that's a real possibility. They absolutely won't be shooting immigrants, no matter what happens, unless they're being fired at. Yeah, so the immigrants are not armed, so they're not going to be shooting bullets at the Americans. Americans won't be shooting bullets at them. There's a lot of stupid media news going out there making all these false claims. Now, just so you know, this has actually happened right before I finish up here. Is George Soros this is back from September 20, so well before this had happened, is that he had forked out $500 million for mostly European refugees and illegal immigrants hitting and he wants to put up this $500 million to help them find jobs and to help them with housing and stuff like that. So that's actually what he's been trying to do there. So it kind of lends credence to the fact there's $500 million. There was maybe 20-30 million of that 500 million being used to get a lot of these immigrants to join this mass exodus at this time, and they're not behaving at all like refugees. That if you're in a sorry state in a poor country and you want to find life in America, you're not going to be saying out with Trump as you march towards the country. That's absolutely strange and pathetic. Here's something that's quite interesting. In Hong Kong, they just opened, Xi Jinping, the president of China, has just opened this bridge up. Here's a bridge here, so it goes underground here. So right here, this is because you have to have ships to be able to cross over one section of it. But it's the longest bridge in the world, and it cost $20 billion. About 20 people died making it, and it took about 9 years or so to build it. Massive bridge, and what's going to do is going to connect Hong Kong with the mainland of Macau. Look at that bridge there. Absolutely amazing. The feats there. So you've got that had just opened this week, so I thought you might be interested in that, and it's going to sort of tie in communist China with more capitalistic Hong Kong, although China does have total control over Hong Kong, but they do have more freedom in Hong Kong than what they do on the mainland. So let me see if there's anything else here. This is just another thing I forgot to mention with these illegals. They do photo ops where they're all marching in unison, but then when they're not marching, they're taking every means possible, getting in the back of trucks, get on top of trains, going down the road on these flatbed trucks. Somebody's paying for these buses, trucks, and stuff to transport them because they can't walk 1,200 miles and get here before the elections. So they're trying to get here before the midterms, which just proves it's a political ploy. It's not because they're impoverished down there and they suddenly decided, oh, we're tired of the country. Nobody's even talking like that. So, anyway, so here's some of the powerful players behind the deep state. And then of course you have the masses, historical masses. This has never ever been done. There's no midterms where there's been more excitement for a party, I think, period, in America's history. It's just not happening. These are from today. These are results that are currently online right now. You can see the status there. It looks like we're going to have a red wave. And here's the House. Still have a little bit more work to do in the House, Reps. So if you're in these areas where they're gray, see all these gray areas? If you live in those, find people to get down to the polls and get out there and vote for them. Look at even California's got red and pink there, and a couple of gray spots too. So there's some chance there. Most of Florida is red. There's a tip at the bottom, and one section there is gray, and there's one tiny spot that's blue. Look at that. Florida is going solidly for the conservative side, so that's pretty exciting. Yeah, so I showed you about the fake stories there behind the bombings. There's absolutely no truth to that. So that's about all I have for you today. And unfortunately, I had to live without any audio clips today because I wasn't able to log in. I'm calling you from Montgomery, Alabama. And so I'm on the road and things didn't quite want to work for me today. So I apologize for the late start, and we got the show out there. And we'll tune in next week, Thursday. Last night I wasn't able to make it because I was on the road, and I was trying to squeeze it in, but it just wasn't able to work. But so next week, Thursday night, 9 p.m., tune in. And of course, again, next week, Friday. And of course, the archives are on YouTube, so you're welcome to tune into those. I trust you all have a wonderful weekend, and And a wonderful Shabbat Shalom to you all. Signing off. See you then.